Continue where I left off. Sorry, my stomach was hurting a little bit, hence why I had to what? Took a little bit. I hope you guys can see the board well. Obviously, right. I'm gonna say this, okay? For me personally, in my opinion, okay, freedom is worth more than money. As money can make you happy, but money can't buy you happiness. Whereas when you're free, when you're free, what? You're happy, obviously. At the same time, it's not fun to be poor, obviously. There's nothing worse than being poor. But I'd rather be someone who makes a good living, who's making 60,000, 70, 80,000, 90,000, $100,000 a year and be free than be someone who's worth 10 million, 100 million, and I'm miserable because I sold my soul for fame and fortune, obviously. So in my opinion, freedom is worth more than money. As there is nothing worse than what? Than being a dirty slave owned by someone else and you're not free, man. I'm gonna keep saying this. Take this from me, as even though right now I'm poor and even though it sucks to be poor, the fact that I'm free, I feel I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? Because it's an amazing feeling to have freedom, obviously. Whereas even though it's nice to be rich, if you're rich and you're owned by someone else and you're a dirty slave and you're not free, like yeah, you're living a decent life, you're able to do good things with that money, but chances are you're gonna be miserable because you sold your soul for fame and fortune and what? You're no longer free, obviously. So in my personal opinion, freedom is worth more than money, as there's nothing worse than being a dirty slave owned by someone else and you're not free. I'm gonna keep saying that. Even though having a lot of money is nice, there's nothing worse than being a dirty slave and being owned by someone else. As I'm gonna keep saying this, all these Hollywood celebrities, their life looks amazing on camera. You see their fame, oh my god, they're movie stars, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool to experience the Comic-Con, the crazy fans. You're a movie star, obviously. It's fun, all that stuff is fun, obviously. I guarantee behind the scenes, a lot of them are very miserable. A lot of them are very depressed because they sold their soul for fame and fortune. A lot of them break down in tears probably because they did unspeakable things to make that money. Right? They did unspeakable things to make that money. Hence why all of them so badly want to work for my Skyscraper's company because me, Ivan O'Mara, now we paid him the millions. He's going to grant them freedom. There's nothing better than being rich and free. Being rich and free, you're getting the best of both worlds. Now, don't get me wrong. Having money is nice. Believe me, having money can solve a lot of problems. It's nice to have a lot of money. But there's nothing worse than having a lot of money and you're owned by someone else and you're a dirty slave and you're not free, man. It's not a good feeling to not be free. It's a shitty feeling to not have freedom. Yeah, but it's also a shitty feeling to not have money, obviously. But I'd rather be someone who makes 60, 100 grand a year and make a good living and have my freedom than be someone who's worth, I don't know, 100 million. I did unspeakable things to make that money. See what I'm saying here? So let me do a big comparison here. All my markers are red now, man. Let's try orange. I'll try green. I only have green and orange. Only my red, orange, and all my dark markers don't work, man. Right? Right. So you have what? Okay. This is the what? The free. I'll say this. You have the average person. This is what? This is the average person, okay? Now, this is a Hollywood celebrity. I'll say this. This is a Hollywood celebrity. So what is the difference, obviously, right? The Hollywood celebrity, obviously, the Hollywood celebrity, he obviously what? He has what? He has money, obviously, right? So he's rich. He or she's rich, obviously. But no freedom. Why? Because they're owned by someone else. Obviously. Someone else owns them. Hence they're what? They're slaves. So even though the Hollywood celebrity is rich and has money, they have no freedom because they're owned by someone else. Someone else owns them, obviously. Whereas the average person, obviously what? Not rich, obviously. I'll write it on this side, that way you can see it better. Right. So the average person, they're not rich, obviously. When I mean rich, I mean they're not millionaires. That's my point. As you can make $100,000 a year and be free, obviously. The average person's not rich, obviously, but he or she has freedom. See what I'm saying? They're free, which is an amazing feeling. And they're not what? They're not owned. They're not owned by someone. Right? They're not owned by someone. Hence they have freedom. So you see the two differences, obviously. Right? So the Hollywood celebrity, the famous Hollywood celebrity, obviously, he or she is famous, obviously, which is nice. It's nice to be famous. Obviously, he or she is rich. It's nice to have money, obviously. Having money is a nice perk, obviously, to have, but they have no freedom because they're owned by someone else. Hence, they're slaves. Someone else owns them. So even though they have money and they're famous, someone else owns them, hence they're not free. Obviously. Whereas the average person, they may not be rich, obviously. They may not be rich, they're not famous, obviously, but they have freedom. And they're not owned by someone else. They have freedom. They're not owned by someone else, obviously. So you see the pros and cons of both sides, obviously. The pros of the Hollywood celebrity is that he or she has money and they're rich, obviously, which is nice. It's nice to have a lot of money, believe me. It's nice to have a lot of money, but he or she does not have freedom because they're owned by someone else. Someone else owns them, hence they're dirty slaves because they sold out, obviously. They sold out to the Hollywood system, obviously. See what I'm saying here? Hence they're not free. So Hollywood celebrities don't have freedom. They don't know what it's like to be free, obviously. Whereas the average person, he or she may not be rich. When I mean rich, they're not millionaires, obviously. They're not famous, but they have freedom and they're not owned by someone else, obviously. So what would you rather have, obviously? Would you rather be an average person who's not rich? I don't know, you're making $90,000 a year, $100,000 a year. You're living an amazing life. You buy a nice house, and you're free and you're not famous, obviously. Would you rather be someone who has a lot of money, you're very, very rich, you're very, very famous, obviously, you're a movie star and all that stuff, but you have no freedom because someone else owns you. And you did unspeakable things for that money. You paid a price, obviously. You paid a price. A price. Would you rather be someone who's very, very rich, someone else owns you and you're a dirty slave, you have to do whatever they tell you to do, you're not free, and you have a lot of money and you're famous, obviously? Or would you rather be someone who has this freedom, you're not owned by anyone, you may not be rich, but you're making a decent living and you have your freedom? Which one would you choose? I would hands down choose what? Ivan O'Mara would choose this choice. Because freedom is worth more than money. I'm going to keep saying that. Like I said in our last video, freedom is worth more than money, man. Believe me. Freedom is worth more than money. I'm going to keep saying that. Your freedom is worth more than money, man. Believe me, take it from me. Even though right now I'm poor, it's an amazing feeling to be free. As there's nothing worse than selling your soul. Yeah, you have a lot of money, but you're miserable because you sold your soul for fame and fortune. Right? I'm going to say this. To all you aspiring C-list actors who dream of making it into the Hollywood system, right? If you are the lucky one, obviously. All you aspiring C-list actors who dream of making it into the Hollywood system, you will find out once right. Once you what? If, I'll say this, if you're the lucky one, what? Chosen. Everything looks good, obviously. Everything looks good at first. But once you what? You step into the office, you will what? You will find out how dirty Hollywood really is, obviously. I don't mean to expose Hollywood like this, man. How dirty Hollywood really is. As you will have to what? Pay a price and sell your soul to be rich and famous in Hollywood. That's how it works, man. I don't mean to expose Hollywood like this. And at the end of the day, Hollywood's the best of the best. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, Hollywood's the best of the best. I'm more than happy to watch the movies. I'm more than happy to promote the movies and all that stuff. I'm just saying that all you aspiring, I keep saying this, I hope you guys can see the board well. To all you aspiring C-list actors who dream of making it into the Hollywood system, if you're one of the lucky one chosen, if you're one of those lucky C-list actors who got an audition for a television show in Hollywood, you know what I'm saying? You auditioned, they said, okay, you're cast for the role. Everything looks good. Your agent's shouting for joy. Congratulations, you got the role for the show. Once you step into the office, that's when you find out how dirty Hollywood is, man. You'll find out how, just like once I make this announcement, I'm going to find out how dirty the gatekeepers really are. Well, it's the same situation for these actors. These actors think everything is nice and dandy, and they find out how dirty Hollywood is. But because they have no choice, if they want to be famous and rich, you have to obviously accept the deal. They put you in a pickle. Either you sell your soul and you're rich and famous, or you don't accept the deal and you remain poor for the rest of your life, obviously. And these Hollywood actors have no choice. And most of them end up selling most of them will gladly end up selling their soul because people will do anything for money in this world. But once they sell their soul and they made that money, some of them end up being miserable because what? They now sold their soul, fame, fortune, and no longer free, obviously. So to all you aspiring C-list actors who dream of making it into the Hollywood system, if you're the lucky one chosen, everything looks good at first in the office, obviously. But once you step into the office, you will find out how dirty Hollywood really is, as you will have to pay a price and sell your soul to be rich and famous in Hollywood. Cold truth, man. I'm gonna say this, cold fucking truth. I don't mean to be evil here. Expose Hollywood. If you want to be famous in Hollywood, you have to pay a price and sell your soul. That's how it works. As there's no such thing as free money in Hollywood. No such thing as free money. There's no such thing as freedom in Hollywood. Hollywood, you're a dirty slave. That's how it works. So all you aspiring C-list actors, if you want to be a famous television star, famous movie star, if you want to make it to the Hollywood system, go right ahead. If you're lucky enough to land, if you're lucky enough to break it into the industry, congratulations. Obviously, you're successful. Congratulations. All I'm going to say is that you have to pay a price and you have to sell your soul to be rich and famous in the Hollywood system. As there's no such thing as freedom in Hollywood. Right? Let's say this. There's no such thing as freedom in Hollywood. No such thing. Cold truth, man. No such thing as freedom in Hollywood. As in Hollywood, you're a dirty slave, and you have to sell your soul for fame and fortune if you want to be famous. That's how it works. There's no such thing as free money in Hollywood. No such thing as freedom. There's no such thing as freedom in this world, being free and rich in this world. When I mean rich, I mean being a millionaire. There's no such thing as freedom in Hollywood. In Hollywood, you're a dirty slave. That's how it works. Right? So I'm giving you a heads up here. It's all you see is actors who want to break into Hollywood industry. Break in all you want. Try and get into the system all you want. I'm just saying, once you're in the system, you're now one of them. It's like a code. You're now one of them. You're a slave to the system. You sold yourself for fame and fortune. Yeah, if you're a movie star and you're a television star, you're living a decent life because you have money and you're famous. You know what I'm saying? You have all the Comic Cons, all these interviews. You're living a decent life. But there's a good chance behind the scenes you're going to be a bit miserable because you sold your soul for fame and fortune. Let's see. Hence you're gonna be what? Is it right? Right. So the Hollywood celebrity, right? The Hollywood celebrity. Hollywood celebrity, right? He or she is rich, they're famous, but they're not free because they're owned by what? They're owned by someone else, obviously. Owned by someone. See, right? Which is not a good feeling. That's not a good feeling, man. Right? Not a good feeling. Hence, the Hollywood actor, there's a good chance they're what? Even though they're happy, I'll mention this later on. Right? So I'm going to say this, okay? So the Hollywood celebrity, he or she may be rich, famous, but they're not free. They're not free. They're owned by someone else, hence because they're dirty slaves. They sold their soul for fame and fortune, which is not a good feeling. Believe me, being owned by someone else is not a good feeling, man. It's a very, very horrific feeling. It's a shitty feeling to know that you're a slave to someone else. It's not a good feeling being a slave. Even though you're rich and you have a lot of money, you're a slave to someone else, which is not a good feeling, obviously. Hence why, I'll say this. When you see Hollywood celebrities, I suppose celebrities wrong. Celebrities, you know what I'm saying, their famous life, wealth obviously, you know what I'm saying, famous life, wealth, interviews, everything looks what? Looks glamorous, obviously. But I guarantee you, I'm spelling guarantee wrong here. I guarantee you, behind the scenes, a lot of them what? Break down, cry, have depression, Why? Because they what? They sold their soul for money, for fame and fortune. And a lot of them are what? A lot of them are obviously miserable, obviously. So even though they have a lot of money in their bank, right? That money, the money that they have is like cursed. It's like cursed, tainted money. So even though I have a lot of money, this money that I have is like, it feels like cursed, tainted money. Because this money that I made, it came at a price. I sold my soul for fame and fortune, obviously. Right? So these Hollywood celebrities, they're rich, they're famous, but they're not free, which is not a good feeling because they're owned by someone else. When you see Hollywood celebrities, their famous life, their wealth, their interviews, everything was glamorous on camera. But I guarantee you right now, behind the scenes, a lot of them break down, cry, and have depression. Why? Because they sold their soul for fame and fortune, hence a lot of them are very miserable, honestly. A lot of them are very miserable because they sold their soul for fame and fortune. So even though you have money, that money that you made is kind of like tainted money, man. Because you did unspeakable things to make that money. You're a dirty slave. You did what? You did dirty shit to make that money, man. You see what I'm saying here? You did some dirty stuff to make that money. Because even though you have a lot of money, you don't feel free. You feel like you're owned by someone else. You know what I'm saying? You sold your soul for fame and fortune. And a lot of these celebrities are very what? They're very miserable. Even though they have a lot of money, a lot of them are very miserable. Whereas the average person may not what? The average person may not be a multimillionaire, but I guarantee you a lot of them are a lot more happy than the celebrities. Because at least the average person has freedom. The average person is making a nice living, they have freedom. He or she has freedom. Whereas the Hollywood celebrities, a lot of them are very, very rich, but a lot of them are very miserable because they don't have freedom. They're slaves to the system, obviously. And they did dirty shit to make that money. Victoria Justice did dirty shit to make money. As Victoria Justice sold her soul for fame and fortune too, obviously. When Victoria Justice does her movies, none of that's free. Victoria Justice has to what? She has to sell her soul to do all those movies, obviously. Even to make $350,000, $300,000 for a movie, you gotta sell your soul for that. To make $300,000 for an independent Hollywood movie, you gotta sell your soul for that. As nothing's free in Hollywood. See what I'm saying here? So all these Hollywood celebrities, when you see their famous life, their wealth, their interviews, everything looks glamorous. Like, oh my God, it looks like they're living an amazing life, obviously, right? Everything looks good on camera, obviously, but I guarantee you, behind the scenes, a lot of them break down and cry and have depression, suffer from depression. Why? Because they sold their soul for fame and fortune. Hence, a lot of them are what? Are very miserable. The main reason why they're miserable, so think about this. They have a lot of money and yet a lot of them are very miserable. Why? Because they sold their soul for fame and fortune. They don't have freedom. They're not free. They're owned by someone else. Someone else owns them. Someone else owns them. They're sturdy slaves to the system. So not only does someone else own them and they don't have freedom, they also sold their soul for fame and fortune. They did unspeakable things to make that money. At the same time, they're owned by someone else, hence they're not free. They don't have freedom. They have a lot of money, which is nice, obviously. You can live a good life with a lot of money. But they don't have freedom, hence a lot of them, even though they have money and they can go on nice vacations and all that stuff, a lot of them are miserable because they don't have freedom. See what I'm saying here? 23 minutes here. I don't know if I can go on for another 30 minutes. Right? I'll say this. Once you bow the knee to the Hollywood system, obviously, right? You are now one of them. It's like a code, obviously, right? You have a code. So you have this code in Hollywood, right? Once you bow the knee to the Hollywood system, you are now one of them, obviously, right? And everyone outside the Hollywood system, obviously, are seen as free what? As free people, obviously. That's how the Hollywood celebrities look at average people. Right? So once you bow the knee to the Hollywood system, you are now one of them, obviously. It's a code. There's like a code, a brotherhood code, whatever it is, right? There's like a code, right? You're now one of them, And everyone outside the Hollywood system are now seen as free people, obviously. So Hollywood celebrities, they see the average person as someone who's free. Because they envy you. Remember, with Hollywood celebrities, they envy average people too. Because they envy their freedom, obviously. They want freedom, obviously. Whereas the average person envies a Hollywood celebrity's fame and wealth. But there's a catch. Those Hollywood celebrities, even though they're famous and rich, they have to pay a price to make that money, and they're no longer free. They're owned by someone else, obviously. They're dirty slaves, obviously. So all the Hollywood celebrities, they see the outside world as what? People who are free, obviously, as free people. They see you as a free person, obviously. Because what people don't notice is that the Hollywood celebrities, they also envy the average person. They envy the average person because they know the average person has freedom. So even though the average person isn't rich, as rich as them, obviously, the average person has freedom, which is worth more than money, obviously. Right? Whereas the average person envies a Hollywood celebrity because the Hollywood celebrity is rich and famous. So both sides, both worlds what? Both sides, they envy each other, obviously. They both envy each other. The free person wishes they could be rich and famous, whereas the rich and famous wishes they can be free, obviously. Hence they both envy one another, obviously. Right? So the Hollywood celebrities, they see all the outsiders as free people, obviously. Whereas the free people see the Hollywood celebrities as what? Sellouts, obviously. The free person sees the Hollywood celebrities as sellouts, whereas the what? The Hollywood celebrities see the free person as what? As free people, obviously. It's actually funny. Right? The Hollywood celebrities see the average person as what? As a free person, obviously. Because they want that freedom so bad, obviously, right? Whereas what? The average person sees the Hollywood celebrity as a sellout, obviously. As a sellout. So you see the difference, obviously. The Hollywood celebrities see the average person as a free person, whereas the average person sees the Hollywood celebrities as a sellout, as sellouts, obviously. Yeah, Hollywood celebrities are all a bunch of sellouts, obviously. Whereas the what? The Hollywood celebrities see the average person as a free person, obviously. As a poor, not as rich free person. Whereas the average person sees the Hollywood celebrities as rich, famous sellouts. That's what they see them as, obviously. It's actually funny. See what I'm saying here? Right? Right? I'll say this, having a lot of money is nice, obviously, right? It's very nice as you could do a lot of good things with money, obviously. But is it worth selling your what? Selling your soul for? Right? That's the big question. Having a lot of money is nice, as you could do a lot of good things with money, but is it worth selling your soul for it? Is it worth selling your soul and freedom for it? So, in other words, is selling your freedom really worth is having a lot of money worth selling your freedom over? In my opinion, it's not. As freedom, in my opinion, freedom is worth more than money. Believe me, man. Freedom is worth more than having money, man. It really is. Take it from me. Even though I'm poor right now, it's an amazing feeling to be free, man. Hence why I'm paying this fee. I'm paying this fee to get freedom and to also be rich, as I would never sell my soul for fame and fortune. No fucking way. As I want nothing to do with that wicked Hollywood system. I want to be independent from Hollywood, and I want nothing to do with the system, obviously. Having a lot of money is nice, as you can do a lot of good things with money, but is it worth selling your soul and freedom over for it, obviously? Well, right, hence, a lot of people would gladly sell their soul for fame and fortune, obviously. But once you sold your soul and you made all that money, chances are a lot of them are going to end up breaking down and being miserable and depressed because they sold their soul for fame and fortune. They're now owned by someone else. They're dirty slaves. They no longer have freedom. Hence, a lot of these people who sold their soul for fame and fortune break down and cry because a lot of them are miserable because what? They sold their soul for fame and fortune. They're owned by someone else. Yeah, they're rich and they're able to live a good life with the money that they have, but they're owned by someone else and they're not free. Obviously. Hence, freedom is worth more what? It's worth more than having money. I guarantee you, even all the celebrities, a lot of them will tell you, yeah, after selling out, I can officially say, yeah, man, having my freedom is worth more than having a lot of money, man. Because there's nothing worse than being what? There's nothing worse than being rich, but even though you're rich, you're miserable and depressed because you sold your soul for fame and fortune and you don't have freedom, obviously. So even though having money is nice and you're living a decent life, chances are you're going to be depressed and miserable because you sold your soul for fame and fortune. You're not free. You see what I'm saying here? You're not free. You're a dirty slave. Right? You're not free. You're a dirty slave, obviously. A lot of celebrities are obviously, they like the money. Having the money's nice. They like the money. They're living a decent life, obviously. But I guarantee you a lot of them are depressed and they break down because they sold their soul for fame and fortune. And they don't have freedom. They're dirty slaves to the Hollywood system, obviously. They no longer have freedom. Hence why a lot of them, I guarantee you, are depressed. They break down. Some of them even watch my videos for comfort. Because what? Because there's no such thing as having freedom in Hollywood. No such thing as having freedom in Hollywood, obviously. Now, I don't know if I should end the video now. Because I don't think I can babble on for another 30 more minutes. I don't know what else to talk about. Yeah, I'm going to end the video here, man. Right, this is it for Ivan Amare. I hope you guys enjoyed this video when I talk about the price for fame and fortune. And freedom and the price for fame and fortune. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for my video tomorrow, which will be a continuation of Chapter 5, Conspiracy Unmasked, my Lord of the Rings series. It's Ivan Amare. I'm signing out. Peace.